Couple of stories here, and I thought we wanted to touch on this because it is so rare to hear something happening in the airline sector where customers have an issue with an airline, they sue, and something actually positive happens. Plenty of stories of people suing, not a whole lot of people actually getting somewhere. So John Gradek is going to weigh in on a couple of stories in the news. He's a lecturer at McGill University's Global Aviation Leadership Program. John, thanks for being here this afternoon.
My pleasure.
Let me start with this WestJet story, which is getting quite a bit of attention. So in a nutshell, you got some passengers traveling on WestJet. They were out west. Bad weather, cancels flights, and WestJet says, yeah, sorry. Even though the law, John, from what I understand, stipulates they have to rebook them, I guess, within 48 hours, even on another airline, they chose to keep some of them hanging for a week. So what's going on here?
It's part of the ongoing battle we have with the Canadian Airlines in ensuring that they respect the regulations that are out there. We've seen so many instances of airlines kind of flouting their or flexing their muscle to kind of say, well, I don't care what the rules say, this is what we're going to do. And I think that this is just another example of WestJet saying, well, I know the rules say, but this is what we're going to offer you. Take it or leave it. And I think that's an example that the situation where there isn't much that the industry or that the regulators have been doing to kind of offset that type of attitude. And, so once in a while they throw a $250 fine at you, but essentially there really hasn't been much action on the part of the regulators to kind of to kind of change this behavior. So
I will point out, in the case of this WestJet, this is not a matter of we're not going to, can't accommodate you for a day. You had booked a vacation and you were flying WestJet, and the next thing you know, it's 8 days later, they can't even get you on a flight. Your entire vacation has been ruined.
That's correct. And that, but the rules say you've got, you have to be accommodated within the next 48 hours, either on your own airline, an associated airline, or any other carrier. And that's what the rules very clearly, black and white, say you have to do as a carrier. And 8 days is not acceptable. It's not even covered in regulations. Shouldn't even be allowed. But that's what they got away with.
John, it seems to me there's always an excuse, and we've had this conversation before. Like, I had a flight that was delayed 6 hours, and they're like, it's beyond our control. But there's always an issue like that. In this situation, it was an extreme cold snap, right? Is the weather somehow an excuse to not do what they're supposed to do?
It's an excuse for not paying compensation. Like there's a requirement for the law to provide you with transportation, and we'll call it duty of care, which is hotels, meals, and all kinds of stuff. And then there's the other side of the APP, the passenger rights. It says if you're late, you get compensation. So this is this compensation side is waived if there's a weather situation, which was the case. So there is no compensation for delayed flights for 3, 6, or 9 hours, whatever the number is. But there is a requirement for you as an airline to provide accommodation for your passengers within 48 hours on your airline or another company's airline. And you have to do that. And they did not do it in this case.
So you covered just now what happens in terms of bad weather. Now, if there's a mechanical issue, there are rules in place for that as well, right?
Well, there are rules there if it's, again, within your control or outside of your control. If you start the engine and the engine goes, catches fire, what is that? Is that within your control or outside of your control? Is it a mechanical failure, or is it something that you forgot to do maintenance on the airplane? You did maintenance and you didn't put the right bolt back in place. The question becomes very technical. Was it something that was outside of your control? I think that it's just a mechanical break, or was it something that you didn't do well when you did the maintenance on the airplane? And so there's a really fine line that defines what's in your control and what's out of your control. So if there's a delay because of mechanical, you need somebody pretty technical to decide, was it really within or outside your control?
I'm wondering, are some airlines guiltier than others in not doing the right thing? Because it kind of seems like they're all pretty bad.
Well, yeah, I think, this is all about money, Natasha. This is all about compensation. This is all about how much do you, in fact, look at compensation over and above what you normally would pay for duty of care, like the hotels and meals and stuff, is one thing. But this compensation thing is new since 2019. They follow the EU rules that the EU put in place, and the airlines, as of day one, said, this is a penalty. This is not out-of-pocket costs. This compensation you're asking us to pay is a penalty that has no value. We can't trace it. It's something that you're telling us we have to pay to the customer. And the airlines have been very vehement and have opposed this type of this type of structure since day one, and they're still fighting it today. So, compensation for the sake of having a delayed flight is not something that the airlines want to get involved in, and airlines around the world are fighting it. So it's a concept that, the Canadian government is still, hanging on to it. The Europeans are still hanging on to it, but the U.S., not sure if they want to go down that road yet or not. So it's still a question of, who's got the political power and who's got the economic power.
Okay, so let's get to one case, though, that did turn out well. So we talk about how few and far between these sorts of things happen. So this is a couple, Nova Scotia couple, going after Air Canada. Took them to court over a flight delay, not one of these, not like the WestJet situation where you have to wait for days to get on another flight, and actually won $1,500 in small claims court.
Yes, sir. That's what, that's your option. That's your option as a passenger who you think you've been agreed by the airlines in terms of them giving you an excuse for a delay that you think is invalid. You had the option. Either you go to the CTA and file it electronically with the CTA after you do your discussion with the airline, and you stand in line. And you're now number 67,000 in that lineup, which means you take a year and a half before you get heard. However, you also have the option of going to small claims court, which this couple did. And the incident happened in July. The hearing by the small claims court was in November that same year, 2022. The ruling came out January 2024.
Wow.
So you won your case.
2 years.
It took you about a year and a half to get it through the legal system. So that tells me, could that couple have gotten justice through the CTA system in as much time as it took to the small claims court? Probably. And would the outcome have been different? Probably not. So it's not that the system doesn't work, it's that the legal system basically is clogged.
Right.
In this case, though, where they went to small claims court, and it still took, as you said, a year and a half, almost 2 years to get this done, is the advice to people who find themselves or have found themselves in a situation like this to go ahead, that's still your best bet? Talk to the airline first. If you don't get anything or don't get enough from them, not satisfied, then go to small claims court?
Yeah, you'll get a lot more action from the airlines in terms of trying to give you all kinds of little offers and having you sign non-disclosure agreements if you take them. To get you to, they'll act a little differently if it's in front of small claims court than it is in front of the CTA. And they don't like the small claims courts because it's expensive. They have to put lawyers there and everything else. So you get better reaction from the carriers going to small claims court.
Okay.
The bottom line is, I find that the airlines are just trying to make things as unpleasant and difficult as possible so that you will just give up. And I'm guilty of it myself. Yeah. I tried pushing it a bit. I didn't like the initial response. I wrote another email and then I let it go. The vast majority of people still do exactly that, do they not, John?
They still do. And I think that's part of their rationale for being as obtuse as they are in answering any questions you have about your flight. So and they tend to try to give you a deal. Here's 10,000 Aeroplan points, or here's a $100 certificate off your next flight. But you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement saying this is something that we don't want you to talk about. So there's a whole bunch of, I call it chicanery, going around that I think that we have to be very careful in terms of how this whole process is evolving.
I want to ask you one last thing. We got to wrap up here. I read today, everyone's obviously familiar with this whole idea of the Boeing jets being grounded over, those bolts on the door that fell off that plane. Did you see how much Alaska Airlines said they lost because of this?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I am not surprised. This is millions of dollars. To ground 20% of your fleet is a significant amount of revenue, and if United hasn't said how much they lost yet, but it's significantly higher than what Alaska lost. So I think that this is a big bill for Boeing to pay. They will pay, and whether it's going to be in cash payment or whether it's going to be a discount on the next order, there will be financial compensation being offered to both Alaska and United.
$150 million, one airline for like a week. Give you an idea of how much money. John, as always, we thank you. We appreciate the time.
All right. Have a great day. Take
John
care.
Gradek, there you go. That's what's happening. So look, in your case, I remember when you talked about this, when you got stuck there for 6 hours.
Yes.
Did you even go after the airline?
I got
Did you do
food
anything?
vouchers on the spot. They gave us $90 in food vouchers.
Okay.
And when I wrote and said this is not acceptable and it caused all kinds of problems, I got the perfunctory Thanks, but no thanks.
With no more offers, no nothing.
No more offers. We've looked into your claim and found there is no grounds for compensation.
And
And I
you
wrote
walked
back
away.
and said that's unacceptable. And I don't even think I got a response, and I never
And left it
pursued
at
it,
that.
which is what
Okay.
everybody does
Yeah.
because it's just
Yeah.
hassle, right?
Time for what?
Yeah.